I'm Jessica Thompson, 29 years old, and for 2 years I've been living in a converted garage behind my sister's house, basically functioning as a live-in nanny for her 5 children while she works part-time and her boyfriend Carlos comes and goes as he pleases. When I lost my marketing coordinator position during company layoffs, I thought moving to Phoenix to help Michelle would be temporary, just until I got back on my feet. Instead, I became the primary caregiver for Tyler, who's 16, Sophia, who's 13 and has learning disabilities, Danny, who's 10 with ADHD, Isabella, who's 7, and Mason, who's 4 and still struggles with potty training. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My days start at 5:30 when Mason crawls into my converted garage apartment, crying because he wet the bed again. I strip his sheets, get him cleaned up, then wake the others for school. Tyler, being the oldest, tries to help, but he's just a kid himself and shouldn't have to parent his siblings. Sophia moves slowly in the mornings because of her processing delays, so I have to build extra time into our routine. Danny needs his ADHD medication precisely at 7, or he'll be bouncing off the walls all day. Isabella is my little artist, always wanting to show me her latest drawing while I'm trying to make breakfast for everyone. The chaos is exhausting, but I love these kids like they're my own. Michelle sleeps through most mornings because she works evening shifts at Forever 21 in the mall, usually getting home around 11 at night. Carlos works construction when jobs are available, which means some weeks he's gone from dawn to dusk. Other weeks he's home drinking beer and playing video games because work is slow. When he is around, he acts more like another kid than a father figure, joking around with Tyler and completely ignoring the younger one's needs. I work 30 hours a week as a cashier at Target, making $15 an hour, which barely covers my $300 monthly rent for the garage space, my phone bill, gas for driving the kids everywhere, and groceries, since I end up feeding myself and often help with family meals when money's tight. Michelle makes about $1,200 a month at her retail job. Carlos brings in anywhere from $800 to $2,000, depending on construction work availability, and they qualify for government assistance that helps with food and utilities. The garage conversion is basically one room with a tiny bathroom Michelle's ex-boyfriend installed a few years ago. I have a futon that doubles as my bed and couch, a small table where I eat and try to work on freelance social media projects for local businesses, and a mini fridge that barely holds a week's worth of food. The walls are thin, so I hear everything happening in the main house. Michelle and Carlos arguing about money, the kids fighting over the television, Mason crying in the middle of the night, Tyler trying to keep everyone quiet when he's doing homework. Every morning, I load all 5 kids into my Honda Civic, which is getting close to 200,000 miles, and makes concerning noises when I brake. First, I drop Mason at daycare, then Isabella at Sunset Elementary, then Danny at the same school, but he goes to the special education classroom for part of his day, then Sophia at Desert View Middle School, where she gets extra support for her learning challenges, and finally, Tyler at Maryville High School. The whole route takes 45 minutes because Phoenix traffic is brutal, especially during school hours. After dropping everyone off, I rush to Target for my shift, spending 6 hours scanning barcodes and dealing with difficult customers while standing on concrete floors that make my feet ache. My manager, Janet, is understanding about my family situation, but I can only request so many schedule changes when kids get sick or have school events. During my breaks, I try to work on social media content for my 3 freelance clients, but it's hard to be creative when you're stressed about picking kids up on time. Pickup is the reverse of morning drop-off, except now everyone's tired and cranky. Isabella usually has paint under her fingernails from art class and wants to tell me about every single thing she drew. Danny's either completely wired from his medication wearing off or crashing into exhaustion. There's no middle ground. Sophia often has homework that requires my help because the concepts don't click for her right away. Tyler has soccer practice twice a week, which means another 30-minute drive across town to the fields, plus waiting around for an hour and a half while he practices.
Evenings are when the real chaos starts. I help Sophia with her homework, which takes twice as long as it should because she needs concepts explained multiple ways before they stick. Danny needs constant redirection to stay focused on his assignments. And Isabella wants attention for her art projects. Mason requires supervision every second because he's at that age where he gets into everything. I'm cooking dinner, breaking up fights, helping with school projects, managing bath time, and trying to get everyone ready for the next day. Michelle usually gets home from work around 11:30, long after the kids are in bed. She'll peek her head into their rooms, maybe kiss them goodnight if they're still awake, then collapse on the couch with her phone or watch Netflix until she falls asleep. Carlos, when he's around, might play with the kids for 15 minutes before disappearing to his garage workshop or meeting up with his buddies. The actual parenting, the emotional labor, the constant decisions and scheduling and worry, all falls on me. I love these kids desperately, but I'm drowning. My marketing degree is collecting dust while I'm scanning groceries for minimum wage. I had dreams of running my own digital marketing agency, maybe working for a major corporation again, traveling for work, having my own apartment with actual walls and privacy. Instead, I'm 29 years old, living in a garage, using a shower that barely gets warm, sleeping on a futon that hurts my back, and spending my savings on children who aren't mine. The freelance social media work I do for local businesses brings in maybe $300 extra a month when I can find time for it, which isn't often. I had to turn down a potential client last month because they wanted to meet during school pickup time and I couldn't arrange alternative transportation for the kids. My old colleagues from the real estate company occasionally reach out about networking events or job opportunities, but I can never attend because I'm either working at Target or managing kid responsibilities.
Marketing campaigns, who had her own apartment downtown, who went out with friends and dated and had hobbies. Now I'm just the person who makes sure everyone else's life functions. Michelle acts like I should be grateful for the arrangement. She points out that I have cheap rent and family support. But $300 for a garage space in someone else's backyard isn't cheap when you're making what I make. And family support should go both ways. I support this family emotionally, physically, and financially way more than anyone supports me. The breaking point came last Tuesday evening. I was helping Danny with a science project about the solar system while simultaneously trying to get Mason to eat his dinner instead of throwing it on the floor, when Michelle burst through the front door with this huge grin on her face. Carlos was right behind her, carrying takeout bags from Chipotle, which immediately told me they were celebrating something because we never order food delivery unless it's a special occasion. "Jess, come here," Michelle called, her voice bubbling with excitement. "We have news." I left Danny with his poster board and walked into the living room, where Michelle was practically bouncing on her toes. Carlos had this smug expression like he'd won the lottery. The kids gathered around, sensing something big was happening. "I'm pregnant," Michelle announced, grabbing my hands. "Baby number 6. Can you believe it?"
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
My stomach dropped to my feet. 6 children. I was already overwhelmed with 5, and now they wanted to add another baby to this chaos? I forced a smile and said congratulations, but inside I was screaming. Another child meant another crib in the already overcrowded house, another car seat that wouldn't fit in my Honda, another set of medical appointments and school forms and sleepless nights. "We're thinking November," Michelle continued, completely oblivious to my internal panic. "The timing is perfect because Tyler will be 17 and can help more, and you're already so good with the kids." That phrase, "you're already so good with the kids," felt like a trap closing around me. It wasn't a compliment, it was an expectation. It meant they were counting on me to absorb the additional responsibility of a 6th child without question. Carlos opened the Chipotle bags and started distributing food like this was a celebration. "More little feet running around," he said with a laugh. "Tyler, you're going to be a big brother again." Tyler looked as overwhelmed as I felt, but he managed to smile for his mom. Sophia seemed confused, Danny was more interested in his burrito, Isabella asked if the baby would be a girl, and Mason didn't understand what was happening at all. That night, after everyone was in bed and the house was finally quiet, I sat in my garage apartment staring at my laptop screen. I had a freelance project due the next day, a social media strategy for a local restaurant, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept spinning with calculations, diapers, formula, doctor visits, sleepless nights, another mouth to feed, another schedule to coordinate. I called my best friend Amanda, who works as a graphic designer downtown. "They're having another baby," I told her, my voice barely a whisper, because the garage walls are thin. "Number 6? Amanda's voice was incredulous. "Jess, you can't keep doing this. You're basically a single mom to 5 kids who aren't yours, and now they want to add another one?" Her words hit me like cold water. I was functioning as a single parent, making all the daily decisions, handling all the logistics, providing all the emotional support, while Michelle and Carlos got to be the fun weekend parents who showed up for the good parts and disappeared when things got difficult. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "These kids need me. Tyler's doing well in school because I make sure he gets to soccer practice and help him with college applications. Sophia's learning disabilities require consistent support that Michelle doesn't understand. Danny's ADHD medication needs to be managed carefully. Isabella is so sensitive, she needs someone who pays attention to her feelings. And Mason is still so little." "You can't save them by sacrificing yourself," Amanda said gently. "What about your dreams, your career, your life?" After hanging up with Amanda, I opened my laptop and started looking at apartment listings in Phoenix. One-bedroom places downtown were running about $1,500 a month, which would be tight on my current income, but possible if I picked up more freelance work. I could walk to coffee shops and networking events, maybe find a better job, start building the life I actually wanted. But the thought of leaving these kids made my chest ache. Tyler was already stressed about his mom having another baby. Sophia struggled in school when her routine got disrupted. Danny needed consistency with his medication and behavioral support. Isabella was so attached to me, calling me her second mom. And Mason was still so little, barely understanding why Daddy wasn't around much and Mommy was always tired. I closed the laptop and tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. 6 kids, another pregnancy, more chaos, more responsibility, more of my life disappearing into other people's needs? The next morning started like every other morning, except everything felt different knowing another baby was coming. Mason climbed into my bed at 5:45, his pajamas soaked through again. As I helped him change clothes, he looked up at me with his big brown eyes and said, "Jessie, Mommy says there's going to be another baby." "That's right, buddy," I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "You're going to be a big brother." "Will you still take care of me?" he asked, and my heart broke a little bit. "Of course I will," I promised. But as the words came out, I realized I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. Getting everyone ready that morning felt like moving through quicksand. Tyler was quiet, probably processing the news about the pregnancy. Sophia kept asking questions about where the baby would sleep and whether it would be a boy or girl. Danny was more hyper than usual, which meant his medication timing was off. Isabella wanted to draw pictures for the new baby, and Mason was clingy because he sensed something was changing. Michelle emerged from her bedroom around 9, after I'd already dropped all the kids at school and gotten to Target for my opening shift. She texted me a selfie from bed with the caption, "Morning sickness hitting hard already. Thank goodness for my amazing sister." That text message made my blood boil. Thank goodness for me? I wasn't some convenient babysitting service. I was a person with my own goals and dreams that I'd been putting on hold for 2 years. But Michelle saw my help as something she was entitled to, not something she should be grateful for. During my lunch break, I called my mom in Florida. Mom had moved to Tampa after divorcing my dad when I was 10,
18, and we talked maybe once a month. She knew I was living with Michelle and helping with the kids, but I'd never really explained the full extent of what that meant. "Mom, Michelle's pregnant again," I said, sitting in my car in the Target parking lot. "Oh my," Mom said. "That's 6 children now. How is she managing?" "She's not," I said flatly. "I am. I get the kids ready for school, drive them everywhere, help with homework, manage their medical appointments, cook most of their meals, and handle bedtime routines. Michelle works part-time and sleeps through most of the family responsibilities." There was a long pause. "Jessica, that's not sustainable for you. You're 29 years old. You should be building your own career, maybe thinking about your own family someday."
Hearing my mom say it made everything click into place. I was at an age where I should be advancing in my career, saving for a house, maybe dating someone seriously. Instead, I was living in a garage and raising someone else's children while my own life stagnated. I know, I said. But if I leave, what happens to the kids? They're not your responsibility, Mom said firmly. Michelle chose to have 6 children. She needs to figure out how to parent them. After work, I picked up the kids and drove home in silence, my mind churning. Tyler had soccer practice, which meant I'd spend the evening driving across town, waiting around, then driving back home. Sophia had a math test tomorrow that she wasn't prepared for. Danny needed help with a book report. Isabella wanted to go to the park because it was nice outside. Mason needed a bath and stories before bed. As I helped Sophia with her math homework that evening, she looked up at me and said, "Are you excited about the new baby?" I hesitated. "What do you think about it?" "I guess it's okay," she said slowly. "But our house is already really crowded. And babies cry a lot. Will Mommy be too tired to help me with school stuff?" The question gutted me, because Sophia was already asking me for help with school stuff, not Michelle. Michelle had never been involved in homework or school projects or parent-teacher conferences. That was all me. "We'll figure it out," I told Sophia, but I was lying. I couldn't figure out how to manage 6 children while working full-time and trying to rebuild my career. Something had to give, and I was terrified it would be my sanity. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in my garage with my laptop and really looked at my finances. I was making about $1,800 a month from Target, plus maybe $300 from freelance work when I had time for it. Rent for my own place would be $1,500 minimum, leaving me barely enough for food and gas. But if I could get more freelance clients, maybe even land a part-time marketing position somewhere, I could make it work. I started updating my resume for the first time in 2 years. Marketing coordinator experience, social media management, customer service skills from Target. It looked thin compared to where I thought I'd be at 29, but it was something to build on. The problem was timing. Michelle was 3 months pregnant, which meant the baby would arrive in November. Tyler would be starting his senior year of high school, needing help with college applications and scholarships. Sophia would be transitioning to 8th grade, always a difficult time for kids with learning disabilities. Danny would need consistent medication management and behavioral support. Isabella would be starting 2nd grade, and Mason would still be adjusting to preschool routines. I loved these kids, but I was killing myself trying to be everything they needed while having nothing left for myself. And now Michelle wanted to add another baby to the mix, assuming I'd just absorbed the additional responsibility without question. Amanda texted me around 11 that night. "How are you doing? Still thinking about what we talked about?" I have to do something. I can't keep living like this. But I feel so guilty about the kids. "You can still be in their lives without being their primary caregiver," she replied. "You could be the cool aunt who takes them places and helps with school stuff, instead of the person who's responsible for their entire existence." That perspective hadn't occurred to me. I could maintain relationships with Tyler, Sophia, Danny, Isabella, and Mason without living in their garage and managing their daily lives. I could be supportive without being indispensable. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to Michelle and Carlos's parenting patterns. Michelle would come home from work and immediately start scrolling through her phone or watching TV, barely acknowledging the kids unless they were fighting or needed something. Carlos, when he was around, would roughhouse with Tyler and Danny for a few minutes, then retreat to his garage workshop or go hang out with friends. Neither of them knew what the kids were learning in school, who their friends were, what they worried about at night, or what made them excited. They were providing housing and food, but I was providing all the emotional labor, educational support, and daily care that actually shapes children's development. The realization that Michelle and Carlos were essentially landlords, while I was the actual parent figure, made me angry in a way I hadn't expected. I wasn't just helping out, I was subsidizing their decision to have children they weren't prepared to raise. Friday evening, Michelle asked if I could watch the kids so she and Carlos could go out to dinner to celebrate the pregnancy. The request was casual, like she was asking me to water her plants, not manage 5 children for an entire evening on my day off. I have freelance work to catch up on, I said, which was true. I'd been falling behind on client projects because I never had interrupted time to focus. Come on, Jess, Michelle said. We never get to go out. The kids will be fine for a few hours. Then take them with you, I suggested. Family dinner to celebrate the new baby. Michelle laughed. Have you tried taking 5 kids to a restaurant? It's a nightmare. That response crystallized everything for me. Michelle viewed her own children as too difficult to spend an evening with, but expected me to manage them every day without complaint. She wanted the fun parts of being a parent without the actual work of parenting. I didn't watch the kids that Friday. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop downtown and worked on my freelance projects in blessed silence. It was the first time in months I'd been in a public space without being responsible for anyone else, and the freedom felt intoxicating. While I sat there updating social media content for a local bakery, I realized how much I missed being good at something professional. Marketing made sense to me in a way that child rearing never quite had. I understood target demographics and engagement strategies and brand positioning.
Creative and analytical and strategic when given the space to think. Living in Michelle's garage, I'd started to believe I wasn't capable of anything beyond basic survival. But sitting in that coffee shop, executing a marketing campaign that would help a small business grow, I remembered who I used to be and who I could become again. That weekend, I made a decision. I wasn't going to raise Michelle's 6th child. I'd already sacrificed 2 years of my career, my savings, my social life, and my mental health. Enough was enough. The question was how to extract myself without completely abandoning these kids I loved. Tyler was old enough to understand, but Sophia, Danny, Isabella, and Mason would be confused and hurt if I suddenly disappeared. I needed an exit strategy that protected them while protecting myself. Sunday evening, I sat down with my laptop and started researching apartments again. This time, instead of just browsing, I started filling out applications. 1-bedroom places in decent neighborhoods, close to public transportation, within walking distance of coffee shops and businesses where I could network and find better work opportunities. For the first time in 2 years, I was planning a life that belonged to me. Monday morning brought a text from Michelle at 6 in the morning while I was getting Mason ready for daycare. Morning sickness is really bad today. Can you handle getting everyone ready? I'll make it up to you later. There was no question mark, no please, just an assumption that I would rearrange my schedule to cover for her. I stared at the message while Mason tugged on my pajama pants asking for cereal. This was exactly what I had been afraid of. Michelle was already using the pregnancy as an excuse to dump more responsibility on me, and we were only 3 months in. By November, I'd be managing 6 children while she recovered from childbirth. And knowing Michelle, that recovery period would stretch on indefinitely. Tyler appeared in the kitchen, already dressed for school, his backpack slung over his shoulder. "Mom's not getting up again?" he asked, grabbing a granola bar from the counter. "She's not feeling well," I said automatically, the same excuse I'd been making for Michelle for 2 years. Tyler gave me a look that was way too mature for 16. "She never feels well in the mornings, or afternoons, or really any time we need her." His words stung because they were true. Michelle had mastered the art of being unavailable whenever actual parenting was required. She worked evening shifts, partly because it meant sleeping through the chaotic morning routine. She claimed to be too tired for bedtime stories because she had to decompress after work. She missed school events because she forgot or had to work, even though I'd reminded her multiple times. "She's doing her best," I said, but the words felt hollow. Tyler snorted. Her best would be getting up to help with her own kids. I couldn't argue with that logic, so I focused on getting Sophia moving. She was sitting at the kitchen table in her pajamas, staring blankly at a bowl of cereal that had gone soggy 20 minutes ago. Sophia's processing delays meant she needed extra time for transitions, but Michelle had never learned how to build that time into the morning routine. "Soph, we need to get dressed for school," I said gently, touching her shoulder. "Remember, you have that math test today we practiced for? The one with fractions? I think I understand it now because of how you explained it with the pizza slices."
That comment hit me harder than it should have. Sophia's learning disabilities required creative teaching methods and infinite patience. Michelle had never bothered learning how to communicate with her daughter in ways that made sense. When Sophia struggled with homework, Michelle would get frustrated and hand her off to me, claiming she wasn't good at school stuff. Danny bounced into the kitchen, already talking a mile a minute about his science project on planets. Did you know Jupiter has 79 moons? That's so many moons, Jess. Earth only has one moon, but Jupiter has 79. Do you think people could live on Jupiter's moons? Probably not, I said, ruffling his hair while simultaneously trying to find Isabella's missing homework folder. Isabella emerged from her bedroom wearing a tutu over her school clothes, her hair in tangles because no one had helped her brush it the night before. She was carrying a drawing she'd made of our family, which included stick figures labeled Mommy, Carlos, Tyler, Sophia, Danny, Isabella, Mason, and Jess. In the picture, all the kids were holding hands with my stick figure, while Michelle and Carlos stood off to the side. "Look what I made," Isabella said proudly, showing me the drawing. "It's everyone in our family." The drawing was innocent, but it revealed how Isabella saw our family dynamics. I was positioned as the central figure connecting all the children, while their actual parents were peripheral. A 7-year-old had instinctively understood what Michelle refused to acknowledge. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, my throat tight. "Should we put it on the refrigerator?" Isabella nodded enthusiastically, and I taped her drawing next to the dozen other pieces of her artwork that covered the fridge. Michelle never looked at these drawings, never asked Isabella about her day at school, never noticed that her daughter was desperately trying to get her attention through art. Getting everyone loaded into my Honda took 30 minutes because Mason couldn't find his favorite stuffed dinosaur, Sophia needed to use the bathroom twice due to nerves about her math test, Danny kept getting distracted by a butterfly in the yard, and Isabella insisted on bringing 3 different drawings to show her teacher. The drive across Phoenix in morning traffic gave me time to think, which wasn't necessarily good for my mental state. I calculated that I spent approximately 2.5 hours every day just driving kids to and from school. Add in Tyler's soccer practice twice a week, Sophia's tutoring sessions, Danny's doctor appointments for ADHD medication adjustments, Isabella's art class on Saturdays, and Mason's daycare pickup. I was spending over 20 hours a week in my car. 20 hours a week that I could be spending on freelance marketing projects, networking events, job interviews, or just having a life outside of child transportation services. Michelle and Carlos had created a situation where they couldn't function without me, and I'd enabled it by being too reliable. After dropping everyone off, I drove to Target feeling
more resentful than usual. Janet, my manager, noticed my mood immediately. "Everything okay, Jessica? You seem stressed." "Family stuff," I said, which was my standard response to avoid getting into details about my living situation. "Well, I have some good news that might cheer you up," Janet said. "Corporate is looking for someone to help with social media marketing for our district. It would be part-time, maybe 15 hours a week, but it pays $22 an hour. Interested?" $22 an hour for marketing work. That was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd been hoping for. A chance to use my actual skills instead of just scanning barcodes. "Absolutely," I said. "When would it start?" "Next week, if you want it. The hours are flexible, mostly working from home with occasional meetings at the district office. You'd be managing social media accounts for 6 stores in the Phoenix area." This felt like a sign from the universe. Better pay, flexible hours, actual marketing experience that I could put on my resume. "I definitely want it," I said. "Great. I'll send your information to corporate today. You'll probably hear from them by Wednesday." I spent my entire shift at Target buzzing with excitement about the marketing opportunity. $22 an hour for 15 hours a week would be an extra $1,300 a month, enough to make living on my own financially feasible. Combined with my regular Target wages and freelance work, I could afford a decent apartment and start building the life I actually wanted. During my lunch break, I called Amanda to share the news. "It's amazing," she said.
See, good things happen when you start prioritizing yourself. I haven't gotten the job yet, I cautioned, but I was already mentally calculating budgets and browsing apartment listings. You'll get it. You're great at marketing, and they already know your work ethic from Target. This could be your way out. After work, I picked up the kids with a lighter heart than I'd had in weeks. Even Mason's meltdown in the car because Isabella was sinning too loudly didn't dampen my mood. I had hope for the first time in months, a concrete path toward independence. Sophia bounded out of Desert View Middle School with a huge grin. "I think I did good on my math test," she announced, climbing into the car. "The pizza slice thing really helped." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely proud of her progress. Sophia had been struggling with fractions for months, but the visual teaching method we'd practiced finally clicked for her. "My teacher said I'm improving a lot this semester," Sophia continued. "She wants to know if you can come to parent-teacher conferences next week." Parent-teacher conferences. Another responsibility that should belong to Michelle, but had somehow become mine. "I'll check my schedule," I said, knowing I'd rearrange whatever I needed to be there for Sophia. Tyler was waiting outside Maryville High School with his soccer gear, looking frustrated. "Coach wants to meet with families about college recruitment. He thinks I might have a shot at a scholarship." My heart swelled with pride. Tyler was a talented player and an excellent student despite everything going on at home. A soccer scholarship could change his entire future, get him out of this chaotic household and into a college environment where he could thrive. "That's incredible, Tyler! When's the meeting?" "Thursday night at 7. But, Mom will probably be working, and Carlos, he trailed off, but we both knew Carlos had never attended a single school event. "I'll be there," I promised, already mentally rearranging my schedule again. "Thanks, Jess. You always show up for us." His words were meant as a compliment, but they made me feel trapped. I always showed up because no one else did. Michelle and Carlos had abdicated their parental responsibilities so completely that the kids didn't even expect them to be present for important events. That evening, while helping Isabella with an art project about ocean animals, my phone rang. It was Michelle, calling from Forever 21. "Hey, can you pick up some groceries on your way home?" she asked without preamble. "We're out of milk and bread, and I won't get off work until 11. "I'm helping Isabella with homework right now. Can't Carlos go?" "He's working late, too." "Come on, Jess. It's just a quick stop at the store." A quick stop at the store with 5 kids was never quick. It meant loading everyone back into the car, dealing with Mason's meltdown in the cereal aisle, preventing Danny from touching everything, while simultaneously helping Sophia read ingredient labels for her science project, and spending 40 minutes on an errand that should take 10. "Fine," I said, because saying no felt impossible when it meant the kids wouldn't have breakfast food in the morning. Isabella looked up from her sea turtle drawing. "Why can't Mommy buy groceries?" "She's at work, sweetheart." "She's always at work. You're more like our mom than she is." The innocent honesty of children can cut deeper than any deliberate insult. Isabella wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She was simply stating her reality. In her 7-year-old world, I was the person who took care of daily needs, helped with homework, attended school events, and provided emotional support. Michelle was the person who occasionally appeared and told them what they couldn't do. At the grocery store, Mason had his predicted meltdown when I wouldn't buy super sugary cereal. Danny kept asking if we could get ingredients for his science project, and Sophia carefully read every label looking for foods that didn't contain artificial dyes because she'd read somewhere that they might make kids hyperactive. Tyler, mature beyond his years, helped corral his siblings and carried grocery bags without being asked. The entire trip took an hour and cost $87 on my credit card because Michelle had forgotten to leave money. This was becoming a pattern where I'd end up covering family expenses and hoping Michelle would pay me back, which happened about half the time. Wednesday morning brought the call I'd been hoping for. "Jessica, this is Maria Santos from Target Corporate. Janet gave your information about the social media marketing position. Are you available for a phone interview today?" "Absolutely," I said, stepping outside into Michelle's backyard where it was quieter. The interview went better than I had expected. Maria was impressed with my marketing background and the freelance social media work I'd been doing for local businesses. She explained that the position involved creating content for 6 Target stores, managing their social media calendars, and analyzing engagement metrics. The hours are flexible, mostly remote work with 1 in-person meeting per week. We're thinking Tuesday through Thursday, 3 to 5 hours each day, plus the
Weekly meeting on Fridays. Does that work with your current schedule? It absolutely worked with my schedule. I could do the marketing work during morning hours while the kids were at school, before my regular Target shifts. That sounds perfect, I said. Great. We'd like to offer you the position starting Monday. You'll work with Janet to adjust your cashier schedule to accommodate the marketing hours. After hanging up, I sat in Michelle's backyard feeling lighter than I had in months. $1,300 extra a month, flexible hours, actual marketing experience, and a foot back in the door of my chosen career field. This was the beginning of my escape plan. I called Amanda immediately. I got the job, I said, unable to keep the excitement out of my voice. Jessica, that's amazing. See, I told you good things would happen. How much extra money will that be? About $1,300 a month. Combined with everything else, I can afford my own place. So you're really going to do it? Move out? The question made my stomach flutter with anxiety and excitement. I think so. I have to. This pregnancy announcement was the wake-up call I needed. I can't raise 6 children that aren't mine. What about the kids? It was the question I'd been avoiding. I don't know yet. I love them, but I can't sacrifice my entire life for them. Maybe I can figure out a way to still be involved without being their primary caregiver. That evening, Michelle came home from work earlier than usual, around 9:30. She found me in the kitchen helping Tyler with a college application essay about overcoming challenges. He was writing about maintaining good grades and playing soccer despite an unstable home environment, though he was diplomatic enough not to explicitly blame his parents. "What are you two working on?" Michelle asked, peering over our shoulders. "College applications," Tyler said. "The deadline for early admission is next month." Michelle nodded vaguely. "That's nice, honey." "Jess, did you get groceries yesterday? Carlos said we were out of bread." The fact that Michelle was more concerned about bread than her son's college future perfectly encapsulated her priorities. Tyler glanced at me with a look that said, "See what I mean?" but continued working on his essay. "I got groceries," I said. "The receipt is on the counter. It was $87. "Oh, right. I'll pay you back when I get paid Friday." Michelle disappeared into her bedroom, leaving Tyler and me alone again. He waited until he heard her door close before speaking. "You know she's not going to pay you back, right? She still owes you for groceries from 2 weeks ago." Tyler was right. Michelle had a convenient memory when it came to money she owed me. She'd promised to pay me back next week or when Carlos gets paid, but those payments rarely materialized. Meanwhile, I was subsidizing her family's living expenses while living in a garage and trying to save money for my own place. "Don't worry about it," I told Tyler. "Let's focus on getting your essay finished." But I was worried about it. Not the $87 specifically, but the pattern of financial responsibility that had developed. I was paying for groceries, kids' school supplies, gas for all the driving I did, and often covering utility bills when Michelle and Carlos came up short. Meanwhile, they were talking about having a 6th child they clearly couldn't afford to support. Thursday evening was Tyler's soccer meeting about college recruitment. I sat in the Maryvale High School library with about 30 other families, listening to Coach Rodriguez explain the scholarship process and introduce 2 college scouts who'd been watching the team. Tyler was one of 5 players singled out as having strong scholarship potential. The scouts wanted to meet with him individually and discuss his academic record, which was impressive despite his chaotic home life. One scout from Arizona State University seemed particularly interested. "Tyler's got the skills and the grades," the ASU scout told me after their meeting. "We'd love to have him visit campus and meet with our coaching staff. Are you his mother?" "I'm his aunt," I said, which was simpler than explaining the complicated family dynamics. "His mother works evenings and couldn't make it tonight." The scout nodded and handed me his business card. "Have Tyler's parents call me next week. We'd like to schedule that campus visit as soon as possible." Driving home, Tyler was buzzing with excitement. "Did you hear what Coach Rodriguez said? ASU, Jess. I could get a full ride to ASU."
I'm so proud of you, I said, and I meant it. Tyler had worked very hard to maintain good grades and excel at soccer despite having parents who were completely uninvolved in his education or extracurricular activities. You'll help me with the application process, right? The scout said there's a lot of paperwork and essays. Of course, I said automatically, then caught myself. If I moved out in the next few months, would I still be available to help Tyler navigate college applications? He needed support, but providing that support meant continuing to enable Michelle's parental neglect. Tyler, what would you do if I wasn't around to help with this stuff? He was quiet for a long moment. I guess I'd figure it out myself. I always do. But it's nice having someone who actually cares about my future. That conversation haunted me for the rest of the drive home. Tyler was mature and responsible, but he was still a 17-year-old kid who deserved to have parents invested in his success. If I left, he'd lose the only adult in his life who consistently supported his goals and attended his events. Friday brought my first weekly meeting for the new marketing position. I drove to the Target district office downtown, feeling professional for the first time in months. Maria Santos gave me a tour of the facilities and introduced me to the team I'd be working with. Your background is exactly what we were looking for. Someone who understands both marketing strategy and retail operations. We're excited to see what you can do with our social media presence. The work itself was engaging and familiar. I'd be creating content calendars, designing graphics, writing captions, and analyzing engagement data. It was creative and strategic, requiring skills I'd missed using during my 2 years of basic retail work. You'll have access to our design software and analytics platforms. Most of the work can be done remotely, but we like to check in face-to-face once a week to review campaigns and brainstorm new ideas. Leaving the district office, I felt energized in a way I hadn't experienced since my old marketing coordinator job. This was who I was supposed to be: creative, strategic, professional, not someone whose primary identity was unpaid childcare provider. That evening, I started looking at apartments seriously. One-bedroom apartments in decent Phoenix neighborhoods were running about $1,500 to $1,800.
$1,700 a month. With my new income, I could afford something in that range and still have money left over for savings and occasional luxuries. I found a place online that looked perfect. A one-bedroom apartment in the Roosevelt district downtown, walking distance to coffee shops and restaurants, with a small balcony and updated kitchen. The rent was $1,600 a month, available November 1st. November 1st, right around the time Michelle's baby would be born. The timing felt symbolic, like the universe was giving me a clear exit date. I called the leasing office and scheduled a viewing for Saturday afternoon. It's a popular unit, the leasing agent warned. We've had a lot of interest, so if you like it, you'll want to apply quickly. Saturday morning, I told Michelle I needed to run errands and would be gone for a few hours. She was lounging on the couch in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone while the kids ate cereal and watched cartoons. "Can you take Mason with you?" she asked without looking up. "He's been cranky all morning." "I'd rather handle this alone," I said. "It's apartment stuff." That got her attention. Michelle's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Apartment stuff? What do you mean?" "I'm looking at places. It's time for me to get my own space." The expression on Michelle's face shifted from confusion to panic to anger in about 3 seconds. "You're moving out? Now? When I'm pregnant and need help?" "That's exactly why I need to move out," I said calmly. "I can't be responsible for 6 children, Michelle. It's not fair to them or to me." "But where will I find someone to help with the kids? Daycare is expensive, and Carlos is working so much." The fact that Michelle's first concern was finding a replacement for me, not how this might affect the children, or acknowledging that she'd been taking advantage of my help, crystallized everything I'd been feeling. "You'll figure it out," I said, "the same way other parents with multiple children figure it out." I left before Michelle could respond, driving toward downtown Phoenix with my heart racing. This was really happening. I was finally prioritizing my own life over everyone else's expectations. The apartment was even better than the photos. Bright, clean, modern, with large windows and enough space for a proper office area where I could work on freelance projects. Standing on the small balcony, looking out at the Phoenix skyline, I could imagine the life I'd build here. "I'll take it," I told the leasing agent.
When can I move in? November 1st, like we discussed. I'll need first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit. Total of $4,800. $4,800. I had about $6,000 in savings from my old marketing job, money I'd been slowly spending on kid-related expenses over the past 2 years. Using most of my savings for an apartment deposit felt scary, but necessary. I'll have the money by next week, I said, filling out the application. Driving home, I felt a mixture of excitement and terror. I just committed to completely changing my life. No more waking up to Mason climbing into my bed. No more driving kids to school every morning. No more helping with homework every evening. No more being the default parent for 5 children who weren't mine. But also no more of Tyler's soccer games, Sophia's proud moments when math concepts finally clicked, Danny's endless, fascinating questions, Isabella's artwork covering my walls, and Mason's sleepy cuddles during bedtime stories. I was gaining my independence, but losing daily connection with kids I genuinely loved. The trade-off felt necessary, but heartbreaking. Michelle was waiting for me when I got back, still in her pajamas, but clearly agitated. The kids were all in the living room, probably sensing tension, but not understanding what was happening. "We need to talk," Michelle said, pointing toward the kitchen. "Later," I said. "I want to spend time with the kids right now." Isabella ran up to me with a new drawing of a rainbow. "Look what I made while you were gone. Do you like the colors?" "It's beautiful," I said, kneeling down to her level. "Tell me about each color you chose." As Isabella explained her artistic choices, I noticed Tyler watching me with a concerned expression. He was smart enough to sense that something significant was happening, even if he didn't know the details yet. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Michelle cornered me in the kitchen. "Okay, let's talk about this apartment thing. You can't just abandon us when I'm pregnant." "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said. "I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference." "What am I supposed to do with 5 kids and a new baby? Carlos is working construction, his schedule is unpredictable, and I can't afford full-time childcare." "Those are problems you should have considered before getting pregnant with a 6th child," I said, my voice sharper than I had intended. Michelle's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you loved us. I thought we were family." "We are family, and I do love you, but love doesn't mean sacrificing my entire life for your choices. I'm 29 years old, Michelle. I need to build my own career, my own relationships, my own future." "So you're just going to leave us when things get hard?" "Things have been hard for 2 years," I said. "I've been holding this family together while you and Carlos avoid responsibility. That's not sustainable, and it's not fair." Michelle sat down at the kitchen table, her hands pressed against her face. "I don't know how to do this without you." For a moment, I felt my resolve wavering. Michelle looked genuinely overwhelmed, and I knew the kids would struggle with the transition. But then I remembered Isabella's drawing with me as the central family figure, Tyler's comment about me being more present than their actual parents, and Sophia's automatic assumption that I'd handle parent-teacher conferences. "You'll learn," I said gently. "You're their mother. They need you to step up." "When?" Michelle asked. "When are you leaving?" "November 1st. She was quiet for a long moment, probably calculating that her due date was around the same time. "Right when the baby comes." "That's not intentional," I said, though the timing did feel appropriate. "It's just when the apartment becomes available." Michelle stood up slowly, her hand resting on her still, flat stomach. "I guess I better start figuring things out then." Over the next week, the atmosphere in the house shifted noticeably. Michelle started getting up earlier, attempting to help with morning routines, though she clearly found the chaos overwhelming. Carlos, sensing that changes were coming, began staying home more often instead of disappearing to hang out with friends. The kids picked up on the tension immediately. Sophia asked if I was mad at Mommy. Danny wanted to know why everyone seemed worried. Isabella drew pictures of sad faces. Mason became clingy, following me around the house and having more frequent meltdowns. Accidents because his routine felt unstable. Tyler, being the most perceptive, finally asked me directly what was happening. We were driving to his soccer practice when he brought it up. "Are you moving out because of the new baby?" I had been dreading this conversation, but knew Tyler deserved honesty. I'm moving out because I need to build my own life. I love you guys, but I can't be responsible for everyone forever. Tyler was quiet for several blocks. I get it, he said finally. You've been doing everything around here for years. Mom and Carlos just expect you to handle stuff instead of handling it themselves. I'm not disappearing, I assured him. I'll still be around for important things like your college applications and soccer games. I just won't be living in the garage anymore. Good, Tyler said, surprising me. You deserve your own place. And maybe Mom will finally have to actually parent us if you're not there to do it for her. His maturity both impressed me and broke my heart. No 16-year-old should have such clear insight into their parents' failures, but Tyler had been observing family dynamics his entire life. Will you help me explain to the younger kids? I asked. They're going to be confused and upset. Yeah, I can do that. They'll understand eventually. We all know you're not really our parent, even though you act more like one than Mom does. That afternoon, I sat down with Sophia, Danny, Isabella, and Mason to explain that I'd be moving to my own apartment soon. The conversation was as difficult as I had expected. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. But who will help me with homework? Mom doesn't understand the way my brain works like you do. I'll still help you, I promised. Maybe we can have homework sessions at my new place, or I can come here sometimes. Danny bounced in his seat, processing the information in his typical rapid-fire way. Will your apartment have a pool? Can we visit? Will you still take me to science museums? We'll figure out visits, I said. And yes, I'll still take you to science museums. Isabella climbed into my lap, her voice small. Are you leaving because we're bad kids? No, sweetheart, you're wonderful kids. I'm leaving because I need to live in my own space, like how grown-ups usually do. But I'll still love you just as much. Mason, at 4, didn't fully understand what was happening, but he sensed the sadness in the room. Jessie, stay, he said firmly, wrapping his arms around my leg. Jessie will visit lots, I promised, my throat tight with emotion. The following weeks passed in a blur of preparation and emotional turbulence. I started my new marketing position, which was engaging and reminded me daily of why I needed to prioritize my career. I found a moving company that could help with my limited belongings. I researched internet providers and utility companies for my new apartment. Meanwhile, Michelle struggled with taking on more parental responsibilities. She attempted to help with morning routines but moved too slowly and got overwhelmed by the kids' competing demands. She tried cooking dinner a few times but burned food and gave up in frustration. She attended one parent-teacher conference for Sophia, but came home complaining that the teacher talked too much and asked too many questions about Sophia's home support system. This is harder than I thought it would be, Michelle admitted one evening after a particularly chaotic day where Mason had a meltdown at daycare, Danny forgot his ADHD medication, and Isabella cried because no one braided her hair. It gets easier with practice, I said, though I wondered if that was actually true for Michelle. Some people seemed naturally suited to the constant multitasking and emotional regulation that parenting required. Michelle had never developed those skills because I'd been handling everything for her. Carlos, to his credit, started making more effort to be present and helpful. He began driving Tyler to soccer practice occasionally and attempted to help with bedtime routines, though his approach was haphazard and the kids clearly preferred my more organized methods. 3 weeks before my move-out date, Michelle had a doctor's appointment that required someone to watch the kids after school. Usually, this would automatically fall to me, but I was scheduled for an important client meeting for my freelance work. Can't you reschedule? Michelle asked when I explained I wasn't available. This client meeting could lead to ongoing work. You'll need to figure out alternative childcare. Michelle looked panicked. Carlos is working, and I don't know anyone else who can watch 5 kids on short notice. Maybe ask Tyler to watch his siblings for a few hours. He's 16 and responsible. But what if something happens? What if Danny gets overwhelmed? Then Tyler will handle it the same way you would.
Would, I said. He's mature enough to manage a few hours with his siblings. That afternoon, Tyler successfully managed his brothers and sisters while Michelle went to her appointment. No emergencies occurred, no one got hurt, and everyone was fed and happy when Michelle returned home. That went better than I expected, Michelle admitted. Tyler really stepped up. He's always been responsible, I said. You just never gave him the chance to prove it because I was always available. This became a pattern over the remaining weeks. Michelle, slowly, reluctantly, began taking on responsibilities she'd been avoiding for years. She learned to pack school lunches, though they weren't as nutritious or creative as mine. She figured out how to help Sophia with homework, though it took longer and required more patience than she was used to providing. She started attending Tyler's soccer games, where she seemed surprised by how talented he was. The kids adjusted gradually to having their actual parents more involved in their daily lives. Sophia discovered that explaining her learning challenges to Michelle helped her mother understand how to communicate with her more effectively. Danny thrived on the extra attention from Carlos, who turned out to be better at keeping up with his son's high energy than anyone had expected. Isabella started showing her artwork to Michelle instead of just me, and Michelle made efforts to respond enthusiastically. Mason, being the youngest, had the hardest time with the transition. He continued having nighttime accidents and clung to me whenever I was around. But slowly, he began accepting comfort from Michelle and Carlos when I wasn't available. A week before my move-out date, Tyler got news that he'd been accepted to ASU with a partial soccer scholarship. The financial aid package would cover most of his tuition and living expenses, representing a completely different future than anyone in his family had experienced. "I couldn't have done this without your help with the applications," Tyler told me, as we celebrated at his favorite restaurant. "You believed I could do it even when I wasn't sure myself." "You did the hard work," I said. "I just helped with paperwork." "It was more than paperwork. You came to my games, helped me write essays, drove me to campus visits. You acted like my success mattered." Tyler's words made me realize that my involvement in these kids' lives had been meaningful in ways that went beyond daily caretaking. I'd provided emotional support, advocacy, and encouragement that had genuinely impacted their development and opportunities. "I'm still going to be around," I reminded him. "Living in my own apartment doesn't mean I stop caring about your future." The night before my move, I sat in the garage apartment for the last time, packing my remaining belongings into boxes. 2 years of my life contained in 6 cardboard boxes and 3 suitcases. It didn't seem like much, but I was taking with me experiences, relationships, and personal growth that couldn't be quantified. Isabella knocked on my door around bedtime, carrying her favorite stuffed animal and looking sad. "Can I stay with you tonight?" "Of course," I said, making room on my futon for one last sleepover. As Isabella curled up next to me, she asked, "Will you still be my almost mom when you live somewhere else?" "I'll always be your Jessica," I said, smoothing her hair. "That's even better than being an almost mom." Moving day arrived gray and drizzly, unusual weather for Phoenix in November. The moving company loaded my belongings efficiently while the kids watched from the front porch. Michelle stood in the doorway holding her growing belly, looking overwhelmed but not angry. "Thank you," she said quietly as I was getting ready to leave, "for everything you've done for us. I know I didn't appreciate it enough while it was happening." "Take care of them," I said, "and take care of yourself. Being a parent is hard work, but you can do it." "I'm scared about managing 6 kids," Michelle admitted. "Start with managing 1 day at a time. Don't think about the overwhelming big picture, just focus on getting through today. Then tomorrow, then the next day." The kids lined up for goodbye hugs. Tyler gave me his phone number and made me promise to come to his graduation. 6 months later, Tyler texted that Michelle had safely delivered baby Sophia. I felt relief rather than obligation. My downtown Phoenix apartment had become everything I dreamed: a thriving marketing business, a relationship with Marcus, and genuine peace.
The kids flourished with engaged parents who finally stepped up. Michelle learned actual parenting skills, Carlos became responsible, and Tyler earned college scholarships. When I visited for Michelle's wedding to Carlos, I saw a transformed family, stable, happy, and independent. Setting boundaries hadn't been cruel, it had been necessary for everyone's growth and authentic happiness. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.